Try to imagine that this happened just a couple of years ago in a supposedly freedom-loving country as the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau threatened unvaccinated truckers with the sack. This authoritarian mandate led to an unprecedented protest in Ottawa in which thousands of truckers pulled up their vehicles in solidarity. The truckers and their supporters saw their bank accounts frozen, an example of government overreach that would have North Korea blushing. Bizarrely, the truckers were labelled misogynist and racist, even though the truckers came from a diverse background. Explain that one. It strikes me as the moment that Canada lost its mind and represented the worst excesses of the West's response to COVID. Well, it's all been recounted in a stunning new book by the heroic leader of the convoy. The book is called Honking for Freedom, the Trucker Convoy That Gave Us Hope. And it's available at honkingforfreedom.com. And its author, Benjamin J Dichter, joins me now. Benjamin, welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. What inspired the idea of the convoy?
Well, it was this authoritarian creep that had been going on for some time in Canada. And by the way, it wasn't just Trudeau. It was also on the provincial level with the Conservative representatives as well. So the government in its totality had abandoned us and abandoned the basic rights of, any sort of British democracy where we have the right of freedom of movement. And we had to do something. And by the way, many of us were vaccinated. I'm vaccinated. A number of the people that organized it with me were vaccinated. It wasn't just about that. It was about all our rights being stripped. And ironically, it ended with the government's locking down not just our bank accounts, but our credit cards, lines of credits, corporate account, absolutely everything. And then you saw that copied and pasted in other jurisdictions like Brazil. So this is getting increasingly concerning.
Yes. Did it surprise you that this level of government control could happen in Canada?
I think it did. I've been a Bitcoiner for many years, and this was actually the case for Bitcoin, which I describe in 2 chapters of the book. Of the $23 million that we raised in donations, that was the only money that was not censored, and we were able to distribute it to the truckers. But yeah, it was really quite shocking, and many people are still, they still have some sort of trauma from this. They don't trust the banking system. When the EMA was invoked, there was a $1.2 trillion bank run, according to my contacts within the government. Like, it really did irreparable damage to Canada's reputation for something that we always thought, and this was the Bitcoin case. We always said, this is for when it happens somewhere else, in the third world. But it happened here. It was absolutely crazy.
How much did the truckers personally suffer in order to make a stand?
A lot. 39 trucking companies lost their licenses to operate. Many independent operators lost their trucks. We now have a $450 million class action lawsuit levied against us by some small businesses tied to the Trudeau government. And that's just lawfare. We don't even know if it'll be certified. But, the process is the punishment. But you know what? It was worth it, because I was just in the UK a couple of weeks ago. We missed each other. But in the UK, when I go to the United States all the time, everywhere I go, people tell me, you know what? It's because of your protests there and the 33 other protests around the world that we're all free and not wearing masks anymore. So it was worth it. It was a sacrifice. I'm glad we did.
Most definitely, the trucker protest was a bellwether for freedom across the world and across the West. What is the legacy of the trucker convoy? I mean, has Canada changed as a result?
I think it takes time. We often overestimate change in the short term and underestimate change over the long term. And I think this is going to be a generational process. But I think what's happened, and I know from my friends in the Conservatives, because I had run for Parliament in the past, so I know everybody in the parties. A line has been drawn in the sand for the political class that there are a group of small business owners, independent middle-class people who, when pushed, are ready to stand up and to protest, which is not something that class of people normally does.
Now, Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister, called the truckers racists and misogynists. Where did he get that from?
I don't know. He also called me a neo-Nazi, and I'm Jewish. And I said in one of the interviews, unlike Prime Minister Blackface, some of us still have family buried in mass graves in Europe. But, he's a puppet. We know, everybody knows on Capitol Hill, he doesn't make the decisions. He comes out, he is, as he once described himself, the relationships manager and, part-time costume enthusiast. But I think the end of his career is very, very close, and we can move on from the COVID blackface era.
Briefly, have you had much trouble getting publicity for your excellent new book?
Well, yeah, you would let's just say the legacy media isn't thrilled with this book. But that is to be expected. And I wrote this for one very important reason. This is all the good stories. There are a bunch of books that have been written that's all apologetics for the political parties that, quite frankly, all failed us. But I wanted to share the story of how we all came together. That's why the cover in the foreground is people and the Canadian flags. And the trucks are in the background because it was about a country finally unifying. And I'll give you one brilliant example. One of the first interviews I did from Ottawa was with a very well-known Quebec journalist who works for a French publication. And I asked her at the end of the interview, as I usually do in interviews, I said, what do you think about this? What do you think about what's going on and all that stuff? You know what she said to me? She said, my entire life, I've been a separatist until I saw the trucks driving across the country. And I bought my first Canadian flag ever, and I now identify as a Canadian, and I realize that we're all unified.
Imagine that. Well, listen, my viewers and listeners need to head to honkingforfreedom.com. Brilliant, brilliant book, and it's been written by Benjamin Dichter, Dichter. I think we've got the graphic there. Thank you very much, Benjamin.